Our perception of money is changing rapidly, and banks are at the center of all of it. From how we access it, to how we buy, to how we trust that that money will be there when we need it. I'm Kiah Haslett, the creator of Fintech Takes Banking. Here on Bank Nerd Corner, I talk with bankers, economists, academics, and more about the complex dynamics shaping the financial services landscape. In this month's Bank Nerd Corner Squared, Alex and I bring our end-of-the-year energy to recap 2025 and look ahead to 2026. We start by chatting about gift-giving approaches before transitioning to two trends or themes we thought were interesting or significant in 2025. We then discuss what two things we think will happen in 2026 and some resolutions we have for the next year. Banks worldwide use Tactile's AI decision platform to power their credit, fraud, and compliance workflows and adapt them in weeks, not months. Built for banking, Tactile's platform is transparent, audit-ready, and made to test and optimize decisions continuously. Learn more at tactile.com. Hey, Alex, how are you doing today?
I am good. I'm excited to be back.
Yeah, I feel like I went from not seeing you for months to seeing you every other week in the fall. And now we're back to after we parted at AFC and you went to NerdCon. I haven't seen you for a bit. How have you been?
I've been good. I'm delighted to not be on the road anymore. So now I'm in what I'm calling my hibernation period.
Okay.
And so I am just like hunkered down. There's lots of like baking happening at my house.
Has there been
my
snow?
Fireplace repaired. There's snow. Yes. So like we are like fully in winter mode now. Actually, the Builders Summit, the Fintech Takes Builders Summit, which you attended in Bozeman, Montana, was kind of the last gasp of like nice fall weather. And now like we're into like proper winter. So it's awesome.
That's excellent for me to hear because I was very concerned prior to the summit about the weather. And I'm so relieved to hear that I missed it. And you get the snow and ostensibly you like snow. And then I don't have to deal with snow because I don't like snow.
Everyone wins. Yeah, I mean, in Nashville, I'm assuming it's like really cold, like 72 degrees or something.
It's 50 right now, and that's the warmest it's been in a couple of weeks. I really don't like doing the coats, like over like the precipitation. There was like hail, sleet a little bit. Nashville gets icy. It doesn't get snowy, unfortunately.
Snow. Well, I will say snow is far better than ice. Like I'm not a huge fan of ice. I do like fresh powder though. So snow I'm happy to deal with. My hope is that for Christmas I may get a snowblower.
That's a good gift.
Yeah. My wife and I have gotten to the point in our relationship where we just sort of get the other person presents to make their chores that they do in the house more efficient. And so I think it's a decent chance that I might get a really like kick-ass electric snowblower, and that would make my life much easier.
I've been including a little gift guide at the bottom of all my newsletters for the last couple of weeks, which is, I think, I don't know if people actually care or read those things, but it's becoming a little bit of a chore for me to figure out like what do I think you should buy someone else. And one of the reasons why is because I'm trying not to suggest gendered items. Like I feel like I like some stuff because I'm a girl, but I don't want to like put that in there. And then the other thing is I don't know if I should put in stuff that's like chores in as a gift guide or as a gift suggestion. So like I was thinking about like cloth napkins and I was like, oh, that's definitely like something someone cleans. And I don't know if that's like, if on Christmas Day or whatever gift giving you do, you would open that and be like, oh my gosh, I've been waiting all year for cloth napkins.
Well, so this buttresses with a theory that I have about gift giving. We take gift giving in my family very seriously. Okay. And so there's lots of arguments about like, for Christmas, like, should you make a list of things that you want?
You should make a list.
I agree. Okay. And generally speaking, people are on board with lists. But like, then if you make a list, like how prescriptive should that list be versus how sort of general should it be? Should you just, because at a certain point, like if you make your list too detailed, it's basically just like asking, like, just give me a gift card to this place. Like, what's the point of even giving a gift? But on the flip side, my dad this year made a Google Docs Christmas list where he included screenshots of the products that he wants. And he gave me the name of the company, but like no link. There was no name of the product. He's like, I want this. It was like he cut out a picture out of a magazine, but like the digital version of it. I was like, dude, like I need
this
a little bit more than that.
This is what kids used to do, right? And like they get the big JCPenney and they would cut it out. And like that was their wish list, their book.
Totally. Yeah. And so like I got the digital equivalent of that this year. So I've been having to parse that. But my theory is that with gift giving, you basically have to kind of make a choice between, do I want to get someone something that they will genuinely get a lot of like joyful use out of for a long time? Or do I want to get someone something that's really fun to open and I get to see the cool look on their face when they get really excited about it? And sometimes you can get something that's both of those things, but I think a lot of times you're sort of choosing to maximize one of those things versus the other. So like the kids' example of this is like clothes versus like Legos or something, right?
Yeah.
But I think it exists with adults too, because like, you know, I got my wife like a really nice kitchen knife, which she wanted.
Oh, nice, yeah.
And it's crazy sharp. I've cut myself with it multiple times already, and it's awesome. But it's not crazy fun to open. In fact, it's a little sharp and dangerous to open. And so like it didn't have that like, oh, look how excited you are on Christmas or on her birthday sort of thing. And so I think there's a trade-off there. What do you think about this theory?
I do understand the aesthetics of opening something and the joy someone would get from opening it. And that is really hard to replicate in a pragmatic gift unless someone really, really wanted that thing.
If they get really excited about a pragmatic gift, maybe.
And it's the other thing too, and I think you probably included this, is like the pragmatic gift should be like specific and probably expensive, like a little more than you were willing to spend on that thing. And that's why you don't have that thing.
Totally. Well, and then the wow factor is more like, I can't believe you spent this money on me, you know, kind of a thing, more than it is like the thing itself. I agree with that. I also have done the different route of like go off the list. And that's always dangerous, right? That's like, that would be like the equivalent of like proposing to someone and getting an engagement ring that she hasn't seen before. And you're like, you're taking quite a risk that like your taste and judgment is going to be good enough. And I've done that occasionally, not with the engagement ring, but with other things. And that's always risky too, because they open it and then they look at it and they're like, they don't even necessarily know what it is or why you got it. And like watching those emotions play over someone's face is also kind of like a bit of an adrenaline sport. So like depends on how much risk you want to take in your gift giving.
Yeah, I had a friend where, and this is the end of year show, and this is end of year energy we're bringing to the end of year show.
It really is. Yeah.
I had a friend where I had to buy, like, she's a high school friend, and I got her for Secret Santa, and then she had a birthday, and then she got married, and it was like within 6 months, it was a lot to buy someone, and like this was a high school friend, I don't see her all the time, and so the first time I got for her for Secret Santa, a photorealistic pillow of her dog. Which I thought was very funny.
Okay, like it. Good Secret Santa.
No one wants this item, but I think everyone who has a dog is okay with having a photorealistic pillow of their dog.
It's kind of something that they probably would never say they want, but they actually are glad they have. Yeah, I get that.
So the second one was for her wedding, gift, a custom like paper cutout portrait from someone I know who has an Etsy shop, and I got it in like her favorite pose with her husband, and then it was their wedding clothes.
Sure. So good gift.
And then the third one, like again, I now have to buy a third gift, and the birthday gift I combined with other people, with like the other girls from high school. Yeah. And so I could spend a little bit more money on this one, but I was really running out of ideas. And so scraping the bottom of the barrel was like, there's this Japanese artist who makes lamps from real pieces of bread. They're like preserved pieces of bread. And they're like just expensive enough that I don't want to buy it for her. Sure. But I think it's like funny enough that the squad could buy it for her.
Sure.
And because it's made in Japan, it takes like 6 to 8 weeks to show up. So we miss her birthday completely. Nice. Because we didn't make this decision in time. And then it just shows up one day. There's there's no indication of who it's from. And then there's also just she gets a piece of bread that has a light bulb in it and a place for batteries. And she put it on her bookshelf, and it looks really nice. And it actually looks nice enough that she has suggested we buy it for another person in the friend group before, when we're kind of just out of ideas of what to buy people. We're like, there's always a bread lamp.
Bread. Oh my God. That is, I mean, there's like scraping the bottom of the barrel, and then there's like jackhammering through the bottom of the barrel to get to whatever is underneath the barrel. Like bread lamp is so far down there. You have to put the link in the show notes. You have to put a link in the show notes to this.
I want to show you this. Sorry, I'll move my bike back. Okay. This is what my friends got me. So again, this is scraping the bottom of the barrel. I really love vintage plates. So they found this artist on Etsy who took a vintage plate and then painted soggy bacon, which is my favorite type of bacon. And
that's
I love
a different
bacon.
Conversation we have to have, but we'll circle back to that.
And this is what they got me for my birthday.
Oh my gosh. So this feels like all of the gift giving in your friend group seems white elephant adjacent in the sense that like if it's not both expensive and thoughtful and kind of funny, it's not a good gift. Is that a fair way to summarize the thinking? Okay.
Yes.
That's fair.
Okay.
That's fair. As long as there's this is my thing with gift giving is as long as there's a shared understanding of whatever the culture is in your little group for gift giving, and you adhere to that culture, makes all the sense in the world. And in that context, I guess a bread lamp does make sense. Please, on behalf of listeners, do put a link in the show notes to the bread lamp if you wanted to, if you're looking for one last
photorealistic picture, pillows of pets. Yep. Bread lamps. I got you.
Okay. Now I want to go back and go through all your newsletters from the last couple of weeks. I haven't been scrolling all the way to the very bottom to look at the gift suggestions, but now I'm going to.
All right, let's talk about banking. And like I said, this is my end of year episode. And end of year is kind of weird, I feel like, in financial services, in regulatory, right? Like everyone's trying to kind of close their books, even if it's not a calendar year close.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm going to be out of the office. We're trying to just land
Friday's
planes.
Over. Yeah.
So something that you'll see, I feel, is like everyone kind of getting stuff off their desk. So there's going to be like probably more releases coming out of just weird like settlements or, maybe some things like RFIs or policy proposals, right? They just want to get it out. But I thought that you and I could spend some time reflecting on 2025.
Yeah.
And thinking about 2026. So my first question for you is, what are two of the most significant or interesting developments this year for you?
Okay, so I will answer this question, and then you're going to answer this question.
Yeah, we can do a one for one.
All right, we'll do one for one. So my first one is what I am thinking of in my own brain as supply-driven product roadmaps. Okay. So let me explain that term. So what I have noticed is since I started covering the financial industry full time through Fintech Takes, is that there are moments in time where companies' product roadmaps are really defined by demand, right? So like, what do we notice our customers wanting? What do they tell us they want? How do we see our customers using our product? How do we see our customers using our competitors' products? And what can we do? What can we build for our customers that would make their lives or how they're using our services better? So think of that as like demand-driven product roadmaps. The product roadmap is shaped by demand from customers about what they want, what they don't have. Then there are other moments in time, moments where the stock market is up, moments when investors are very excited about things, where you get what I think of more as supply-driven product roadmaps. And this is when technologies that don't really have anything necessarily to do with demand from customers start infiltrating product roadmaps. And I noticed this phenomenon in 2021. So 2020, 2021 was like this period of mania in fintech and in banking when we were getting all spun up and excited about lots of things that were happening. This, by the way, was when like buy now, pay later was really exploding. And then suddenly banks were adding buy now, pay later functionality to their credit cards. And it was like this whole thing. And then it kind of cooled off. And I would say like 2023 in particular was like kind of the nadir, and like everyone was more back to like, okay, what do customers want? We should probably build that. And now in 2025, one of my big observations about an important like trend or development this year is that we sort of return to supply-driven roadmaps, where now, and I would highlight two technologies as being at the top of the pile. Everyone had to have a stablecoin strategy, and everyone had to have an AI strategy. And it doesn't really matter what the customer would use it for. It doesn't matter if it really solves a problem. I mean, I don't know, Kiah, I think you've been involved in a few of these conversations. I can't like turn around and not like trip over a conversation that bankers or credit union executives are having about what their stablecoin strategy should be. And whenever I get involved in those conversations, I always kind of go, whoa, hang on. Before we talk about like what your stablecoin strategy should be, we should talk about like what your customer or member problems are, and then sort of backwards engineer from that. Maybe stablecoins are the right answer. Maybe AI is the right answer. Depending on your business, they might actually very well be the best answer for those things. But like that shouldn't be the place we're starting from. And yet, whether you're a startup raising money, or you're a privately held bank that's just trying to sort of keep up with the Joneses, or you're a publicly traded fintech company or bank, everyone seems to be responding to this like global incentive that kind of came in place in 2025, which is if you're not doing something stablecoin oriented or AI oriented, you're not innovating and you're not keeping pace with the industry. So this return to supply driven product roadmaps is my first observation.
Why do you think they shift back and forth? Why do you think they oscillate?
I think it has a lot to do. I mean, I think everyone's a creature of incentives, really, fundamentally, right? We're all hostage to the incentives that we have. And I would say that when the stock market or when investor sentiment is sort of down or a little depressed, investors are not putting a lot of pressure on the companies that they invest in around specific things. They're more just like, hey, we want you to not be a problem in our portfolio, right? So just do good things, make your customers happy. So it kind of gives companies some space to sort of figure out like, well, what should we be building from like a first principles perspective? But when sentiment is up, when investors are excited, when there's lots of like FOMO about missing out on whatever the new category is, investors heap that pressure onto the companies they invest in. And I think that's why stablecoins and AI are the ones that jump out to me, is because those are the two that I've noticed investors, and this could be private equity or public market investors or VCs, whoever, expressing a lot of excitement about is stablecoins and AI. So like they'll go to their portfolio companies and be like, well, what's your AI strategy? And they're like, if you said to your investors, like, my AI strategy is to wait until AI makes sense and works well and doesn't hallucinate and then think about what I can do with it, like that would not make your investors happy. You might lose your job because of that answer.
It's interesting because I hadn't thought about this as the drivers, like the pull push. I've definitely kind of seen in banking kind of this play out, the technological priorities and strategic priorities. And with AI, I'm always like, okay, what's your data like? What's your data strategy management usage? Like,
like a crawl, walk, run thing. Like, don't talk about AI if you don't have this figured out.
Think you're going to do this? Or like, how are you going to do it beyond like the easiest and most simple use case around like transaction monitoring and fraud?
Totally.
And so like, it's funny because I hadn't really thought about like, oh, okay, I guess everyone's cool with AI and now you've got to have an AI strategy. But, and then with stablecoin, again, I'm always like, what, like, have you figured out all the rest of your payment problems that your customers have? My thing is, have we moved away from checks?
Right. And that's your sort of question in response to stablecoins. Well, I mean,
that's genuinely like, to me, question number 1, and then stablecoins is like question number 10. So
totally.
But I hadn't really thought about like, why do these shifts happen? And then like, why do banks keep falling for it? Right? Like, I'm not saying don't do it. I'm just saying you're nowhere close to doing this. So where does this come from?
Yeah, totally. I mean, like, I'll just as an example, I mean, there's a bunch, right? So like, I'll use Fiserv as the example, right? Fiserv, this is when I kind of noticed it with stablecoins, is Fiserv came out and said, we're going to do a stablecoin. And it's like, okay, great. And then they released like details about the stablecoin and they're like, yeah, we might use Paxos or we might use Circle or we might use both. And I was like, what?
Okay.
Like, don't you have to kind of decide which one? And they're like, well, maybe we'll use both. We're not totally sure. And you're like, okay. And then it's like, yeah, we might be a stable coin that kind of gets white labeled by different banks, or it might be tokenized deposits. And I'm like, well, okay, again, like those are pretty different from each other and have very different, like maybe you should figure that out.
Yeah.
And it was clear that like Fiserv wanted to announce something around stablecoins well before they had figured out what the thing actually would be, right? And it's interesting because, you know, you sort of track that announcement. There were actually really cool specific things that came out of the Fiserv thing, right? So like Bank of North Dakota, who we know, they are doing a stablecoin. That's their plan. And I believe they're planning to partner with Fiserv on that.
They are.
And like when you actually poke at that one, there's like a real legitimate actual use case for stablecoins for Bank of North Dakota, given that they act as sort of a correspondent bank that's state owned for other banks in North Dakota. Like the use case for Bank of North Dakota stablecoin makes total sense. But you can imagine that for every one of those very like, oh, this is a great use case conversations that Fiserv has had based on their stablecoin initiative, there's probably 100 other ones where the conversation is like, hey, we also want to absorb some of the buzz and the investor excitement around stablecoins. Can we announce some pilot or something that's not even going to happen, that we don't even know why we're doing it, just to like sort of soak up some of the like attention and supposedly, I guess, money that you might get from investors who are excited about what you're doing. So it just seems like a weird way to run your business. Yeah, I guess is my kind of core point. Like, I would think you'd want to work backwards always from neat technology. What do we use it for to how to help our customers? And what I notice in these moments of mania, in 2025 is one, is neat technology. Let's announce we're doing something with it, and then we'll figure that out later.
Totally. And again, the cynic in me is like, isn't this the third time we've heard about these banks doing blockchains? And like, I really wish that I felt like I'm so cynical. Like, it's like when someone says like, I don't know, they're going to run a marathon, and you're like, but didn't you say that like a couple of years ago and you didn't do the marathon then? Like, you just don't have to tell me. You just don't have to tell me when you run the marathon.
After you've done the marathon.
Like, that'll be so like, hit me up when you register. Hit me up when you're there. Like, I don't know. So,
I kind of need you to not bother me about it until you actually have pictures of you doing the whole marathon. I totally agree. I mean, the other thing that's wild about crypto in particular, and maybe AI will turn out to be this way, I'm not sure. I guess we're a little newer in this wave, but the crypto thing is weird because there's these like, you know, bullish and bearish cycles, but they're all happening in this compressed window of time. Like, to your point about, I mean, you remember when banks were talking about blockchain, that was like 2016, 2017, 2018.
It was one of the times, but like,
it was less than a year ago, or less than 10 years ago.
My former colleague, Emily McCormick, wrote an article about blockchain at Bank Tractor. So I know that was after I joined in 2019. Like, you can kind of track these.
Yeah. So it goes through these like cycles that are just happening really fast. Yeah. And so I think the other point that's important to make there, and then we can go to your first one, is all of these things take longer to actually build and get adoption of than the cycles last, right? And so to me, that's the other thing you need to think very carefully about if you're a bank that's kind of looking at this stuff is, you know, stablecoins might be the answer. And if they are, great. But just keep in mind that like whatever thing you want to do with stablecoins is probably like a 5 to 10 to 15 year commitment to actually do it well, build it, get your regulators on board with it, introduce it to the market, get adoption of it, grow it. Like that's a commitment that's going to take a lot longer than the enthusiasm that the market has for that technology is going to last. And so if you want to commit to doing it, just plan as it being a long-term commitment, because like investor enthusiasm for it is going to wane way before you get done actually building the thing.
Right. Yeah, I think about with Triumph Bank, they're building a lot of their own payment technology for truckers. And one of the things is they've like, in trying to solve this problem, they have like uncovered more problems. And so it's like just kind of easier for them to keep kind of tacking on projects. But what's happened is when they've had a bunch of projects, 2 of them are going to go online either by the end of this year or like first half of next year. But like a lot of people are like, hey, is this like ever going to be done? And, you know, they're really balancing a lot of time trying to figure out and explain, like, no, we really do believe these projects are all, one, they're going to finish. They're not like endless. But two, like, it's really important that we keep doing, like, we're not solving the full problem if we don't add this project. But there is like a lot of pressure, and you know that like they've really had to manage their investor base to be patient with them and get the investors that weren't patient out of the stock.
That's the thing. That's exactly the point, right? Is that like, if you go off of what your most excitable investors are excited about at this moment, you won't be able to do any actual like strategic planning or work, because they'll move on to something else. Like we've all had bosses where it's like, before you're done doing the thing they asked you to do, they've come up with a new strategy and a new thing we're going to do. And it's like, no, like we just need to stick with whatever the thing is we're doing, do that well, and then do the next thing. And I feel like in the same way that on a personal level, we've all had bosses like that individually, companies have bosses like that collectively. And that's what I'm seeing in the market right now.
Oh, that's a good one. Okay. So my first one is that I feel like everyone, and when I say everyone in banks, they say with their mouths that they want more banks, but all of their actions are pointing us towards fewer banks. And I don't quite know how to reconcile that. And I don't really know how to pay, like which one I should be waiting and paying attention to. But the incentives this year very specifically are to find a deal, announce a deal, permission is for M&As is here or whatever. And then everyone is also talking about how we need more banks, we need more de novo charters. And I just kind of don't really know how I'm supposed to reconcile these two competitive elements that I'm seeing. And I don't know if like that like has registered to you, the like we need more banks, de novo charter conversations. But that is not the direction of the institutions in the country.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, I wonder if it's coming from two different sides, right? Where it's like, if you are a bank, you want to either sell yourself or buy someone else to get bigger so that you don't have to sell yourself, right? And so like, I guess from the bank's perspective, I mean, I suppose it's nice to have more sort of targets swimming around so that there's more opportunities for that. So maybe like de novo formation helps keep the market frothy, and like, you know, like the fewer banks there are, the fewer opportunities there are for M&A and for acquisitions maybe. And so I guess that might be the banker incentive to just keep more minnows in the ocean at all times so that, you know, we can have a very robust ecosystem with lots of gobbling up of each other. And then from the regulatory perspective, to me, it seems very different, which is that regulators they all talk about we want a like vibrant, competitive, large banking ecosystem, right? This seems kind of strangely bipartisan, actually. Like I don't really see any regulators say
it's actually so common that when I read Fragile by Design and was like, oh, wait, sorry, Canada isn't like this. I was like, I thought it just seemed like a universal truth.
Everywhere in the world.
Yeah,
totally.
It would seem like a universal truth that I had just been told about the U.S. banking system.
Because in the U.S., that's absolutely how every regulator acts all the time. But the interesting thing I've noticed on the regulatory side is when Democrats are in charge, they're like, we want a large, vibrant banking ecosystem, which means that no bank should ever be allowed to buy any other bank ever under any circumstances. So they have a very sort of antitrust lens on having a large, robust, competitive banking ecosystem. Republicans, by contrast, are totally fine with M&A, as you said before, but they're like, we have to add more banks to the system and we have to keep the supply up and add more and more banks. And so I think it's funny because regulators are like, every one of them says we want a large, diverse, competitive banking ecosystem. But the policy answer they have for doing that is very different administration to administration. And then on the banking side, I mean, it seems much more driven by just like, we're going to do whatever we can get away with at this point. But the dynamics in banking absolutely point towards like scale, size, leverage. Like we need more. And, you know, you see, I mean, PNC was one of the ones we talked about in a previous episode. Like they've been very explicit that we're going to try to get as close to as big as Chase as we can before regulators stop us.
Yeah, and I would be interested in almost like a 15-year demographic study about the distribution of banks by asset size in the United States, because the kind of inflation, the bubble getting bigger of the 10 billions to the 50 billions to the 70 billions, that's like, I feel like they really are pulling away. And one thing about like Democratic policymakers is like, at least they kind of kept the banking industry like stable, and you grew through, all banks would grow through organic growth. And then like if there were deals, they would have to be like really carefully controlled because of antitrust concerns, or large banks, or the protests, the Community Reinvestment Act, or the shareholder protests. And then now we have like as many banks as possible are announcing deals. And then also regulators are like, we'll approve de novos, but isn't it so crazy that it seems like the only organizations that want to form a de novo are these not like technology companies. And I feel like banks are actually like, oh no, this is not what we asked for when we said we wanted more banks. We didn't want these. And so they are kind of like, it is kind of interesting to think like this might be as many banks as we have, and how fast like the rate of change declines, and until we hit like 1,000 banks, right? And I think we're just going to get there faster and faster and faster. Because we don't have the ceiling. The ceiling is being lifted.
Well, I think that's right. And I think to put a fine point on what you just said about like the different types of new banks that enter the market, like I think that's really important, because the old model that I think bankers still think about and kind of anchor their view of the world on is, so like if more de novos come in, that'll just fill out the bottom of the pyramid. That'll just make for like an ecosystem where there's more acquisition targets for banks at every size. Some of those small de novo banks will grow into kind of mid-sized banks, and then regional banks, and then super regionals. Other ones will acquire each other. So like it's just a healthy ecosystem if we add more in at the bottom. But I mean, a different way of thinking about that might be more reflective of reality today is, you are not adding more of the smallest animal that lives in your ecosystem. You are adding an invasive species from a different ecosystem into your ecosystem. And just because they are the size of a minnow does not mean that they have any of the characteristics of a minnow. They might eat or harm in other ways creatures much larger than themselves that would ordinarily feel safe. And I do think when I look at like, I'll just pick on Erebor as an example, because they are, I think they were the first of the sort of Gould era OCC approved national bank, de novo national banks. Like they are backed by a lot of very wealthy, powerful investors with deep ties in the tech, crypto, defense industry ecosystems. They are not going to look or feel or sound or act at all like a de novo community bank, right? Like in no way, shape, or form are they going to do that. And, bankers might find that this new crop of de novo banks that are getting added are way more disruptive to the ecosystem than even like fintech was. And I feel like under the Biden administration, fintech was more like the way we added more innovation into the ecosystem was fintech companies coming in and building on top of those kind of old-fashioned community banks. And the new model seems to be more like, no, we'll just add in more community banks, but these are like wildly different de novos than we had before.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. So I thought that was a really interesting trend for 2025,
like that.
And I guess if we have time for predictions, we'll talk about what could happen in 26.
I have some thoughts on that too.
In banking, conditions change fast. Credit teams need to adapt without sacrificing credit quality, compliance, or control. That's why banks choose Tactile's AI decision platform. It gives teams the power to design, test, and refine credit, fraud, and compliance workflows using AI quickly and securely. With seamless data integrations and built-in testing, every decision flow can be optimized in real time. With Tactile, AI isn't a black box. It's transparent, explainable, and regulator-ready, so banks are always prepared for what's next. For more information, visit tactile.com. What's your second
All right, I'll do this one fast. So, kind of related actually to what you were just describing, but I think in 2025, policy work and lobbying completely changed and caught everyone in the ecosystem off guard. Right?
Yeah, the lobbying was crazy this year.
It was crazy. And it's so funny because I feel like for a long time, both in banking and in fintech, the way you lobbied regulators and lawmakers and the administration had a very sort of clear playbook, right? And banks kind of had formed for decades, for centuries in some case, these lobbying organizations that had these very deep, very stable ties with the regulatory and policy community. And then fintech companies came in and kind of tried to form like versions of those same types of organizations, right? And so you could look at like an American Fintech Council or Financial Technology Association, and you could say they're obviously different than like a Consumer Bankers Association or American Bankers Association or Independent Community Bankers Association, but they all kind of have the same general like strategy, organization. There's actually some like kind of similar DNA across all those different organizations. They like approach policy the same general way. And then they all kind of fight it out somewhat politely. Then enter into 2025, obviously in a new administration, just a totally different way of communicating. And I would say the communication was different from the policymakers down to the market, right? And obviously the president is a good example of this, but also like Bill Pulte at FHFA, who's one of my favorite characters of this last year.
Your BFF.
He really is. I mean, he's a great Twitter follow. He doesn't talk to the market or interact with the market at all the way that policymakers or regulators used to. And I think that took people by surprise. And then by contrast, then from the bottom up, you would have new entrants to the market who you would not think would have nearly as much power or influence as they ended up having, because they just kind of knew the new rules of the game, and they knew that like what you say on Twitter is just as important or more important than the press release that you publish. The approach you have to take to like doing research to influence legislators is completely different.
Right.
In some cases, the fact that like bribery is kind of semi-legal now is like a mechanism you might want to consider. Flattery goes a long way. And so like policy has just changed, and lobbying has changed in a very fundamental way. And I think I'd point to two specific examples of where this played out. Well, actually three. So the first is stablecoins, all stablecoin stuff. Banks missed the stablecoin lobbying window by like
the
months.
Rewards thing. The fact that we're arguing about that now.
Yeah, after the law has passed, like it's over, guys. I mean, like you can try to fight it if you want, but like talk about fighting a war you've already lost. Like banks were so late.
They were so it was kind of crazy. It was kind of crazy there wasn't more opposition. They seemed like almost in favor of, and that was crazy to me because it's almost purely competitive. It feels almost purely. We talked about some banks that'll be able to have a stable coin for like 75% of it. It's competitive.
It absolutely is. And I would say that like actually ICBA, ironically, the community bankers were the ones who were kind of further ahead on it because they saw it as like clearly bad. But like, I mean, just to pick on one example, like the ABA was just nowhere on stablecoins for way too long. And they just didn't get enough out of the negotiations. And now they're complaining about, what's happened after the fact. Laws passed. That one's over, right? And so like crypto stablecoins, great example. Second example is obviously open banking. And I think that, you could argue that JP Morgan Chase and the big banks kind of got their way on open banking, which I think in a global sense is true. But I also think if you were to kind of rewind the clock and like look at all the different moves and the sequence of moves that happened, I think the way in which Chase and the banks approached open banking and sort of policy making around open banking gave fintech companies a lot more leverage than they needed to give away, solely by virtue of just not communicating to the market and not communicating to policymakers in the right way. And, quite frankly, underestimating the power that like Tyler Winklevoss has when he tweets, right? And so like, again, I think banks kind of had to learn a hard lesson on that. And then the third lesson, which is less relevant to banks, but has been an interesting one, is everything that's happened with, again, my favorite character, Bill Pulte. It's so funny because when he was kind of announcing changes to the way credit score competition works in the mortgage space, it was so funny watching it because he would tweet like, just had a great conversation with the CEO of this credit bureau. And then like a week later would announce something very positive for credit bureaus.
Yeah.
And then like, and then he would tweet like 5 mean things about FICO. And then like another week would pass and he would tweet like, just had a great conversation with Will Lansing at FICO. And then he would do things that were sort of pro FICO. And so it was just like, it was funny watching the credit bureaus and FICO kind of learn in real time how Bill Pulte is so different than the FHFA that they had known before, and watching them adapt to that. And it's like, you know, I guess the lesson I take away from it is you have to know the rules of the game you're playing, and the rules can change very fast.
Yeah. I do think it was interesting to see, one, a lot of this stuff is happening in the open. Like, so there's not like the political backdoor element. And then two, you know, the back, like learning that the game has changed, also learning who has power and influence or who has connections to the right people and who gets listened to has been really interesting. And in this administration, that seems to change very dynamically. And so it's like, you almost need someone to kind of like, if I were doing lobbying, I would have someone whose job is like just to map the lines of power to different places and be like, okay, this one this week is down, this one this week is up, so we need to shift over here. And like, you're right. I mean, the transparency with which it all happens is both alarming to me as a citizen of the United States of America, but also fascinating as like a reporter and observer of the market, because like this is not smoke-filled back rooms. This is like all happening on Twitter. This season of House of Cards would be very stupid. You know what I mean?
Yes, it would, because it'd be like there'd be nothing happening in these rooms that like, oh wow, this TV show is giving us a window into how Washington D.C. actually works. It'd just be like, what did they tweet? What do we have to tweet? Like, it's just, and I'll stop after this because I want to hear your second one. But like, the other thing I've noticed is, just if people want to see an example of what this looks like, watch how the Twitter accounts, not of individuals, but of companies and trade associations have changed their behavior, right? Because before it was like, you know, the Bank Trade Association Twitter account would repost a press release that the association put out, and that was it. They just existed to amplify in the most generic way possible. Kiah, I have gotten into like personal sort of fights and squabbles with like corporate Twitter accounts for trade associations.
Do not fight a corporate Twitter account. You're already losing.
I'm trying not to. And it's just, but they're much more combative and funny and like sarcastic than they used to be. And I think it's because they're kind of taking a lesson from how the ecosystem works these days. So really interesting to watch.
That's a sad devolution on top of a lot of devolutions we've seen this year. Okay, so mine is kind of thinking about regulation and law as a topic more broadly. In the past, it might have been I would characterize it as unfriendly but predictable to the financial services industry, maybe to fintech, where our areas intersect. And now I would characterize it as favorable but unsettled. And what do I mean by that? For me, my read is that, the actions, the announcements of regulators and the courts in the last 12 months have increased the pace of change and have it's like a 180 change. And so, we spoke last year about Loper Bright and about Corner Post, the 2 court cases that were going to make probably, I think they were going to have 2 things. And we've kind of seen some of that, which is that it was going to make it harder for regulators to do their job. And by that, we meant it would make it hard for regulators to put in regulations that the industry didn't want. And if the industry sued, they would be able to likely have more odds in overturning it. And so that was like...
And be able to sue forever and ever.
Yeah,
and ever.
Right. Yeah. And so we're kind of seeing some of that too. But and that's both again, favorable, but that's less reliable, right? And then separately, even kind of without this, we've seen some courts recently decide to make everything more unsettled. And what are you even supposed to be like, what is law right now? Like, we talked about the FDIC lost a shareholder, like a failed bank shareholder lawsuit or first equity position. We have the 10th Circuit who says, well, if a loan is given to a Colorado resident, that loan could have been made in our state, right? And we have this CFPB thing. We're never going to stop having an open banking lawsuits.
Yeah.
And we have now, like, we've seen, without getting too specific, but we've seen the disparate impact come out of fair lending. We've seen debanking, whatever that means. We've seen, like, what are you allowed to do with crypto? What are you not allowed if you're a bank to do with crypto? I think that list might be shorter than the list of things that you are allowed to. What is the definition of anti-competitive when we think about like the M&A applications? Like, genuinely, what are banks like not allowed to do now, and what are they allowed to do? And like, I think at a certain point, like, it's really like, it kind of goes back to your first point, is like, what do you as a bank think is the right thing to do for your customers? Because everything is just so much less settled now, and I think the ground is less firm. And at least in the past, you kind of felt like you were on firm ground, but you had some headwinds. Whereas now you've got tailwinds, but you're like trying to walk on the ocean, right? Like, I don't know. I kind of can't believe how much change we've seen in the last 12 months. This is the nightmare.
So I love that idea of, like, I mean, maybe a good way to put it is like tailwinds, right? It's funny, we adopt these like verbal metaphors to describe things when we don't even know what they mean. Like, I've never flown a plane. So I don't.
Have you ever run outside and there's a wind blowing right at your head?
Sure.
Have you ever run outside and there's a wind at your back?
I have.
Okay. Tailwind, but like, obviously planes, but yeah.
No. Yeah. Like, and conceptually it makes sense. But like, in reality, Kiah, I've never run during a tornado.
Okay.
But like, I would imagine that in a tornado, like, there probably are moments where the wind is at your back. Wow, this is amazing. But like, I also don't want the wind at my back to pick me up and fling me into a building.
Right.
Or I don't want the wind to suddenly shift and come at me from the side and like push me off the track. Like when we say tailwind, it's a great observation, right? Because when we say tailwind, I think what we are meaning when we say it is a consistent, steady, helpful presence at my back, pushing me forward.
Yeah.
But I think what this administration and what regulation this year has sort of like felt more like is a tornado at my back that can be incredibly helpful to getting me to where I want to go.
Catapult you.
But it could catapult me forward, but not always in a safe way, certainly not in a predictable way. And I think that, like, again, it kind of ties back to what we were saying before. Business decisions, business strategies, business initiatives, like, they take time and consistent application of effort and resources over a long period of time to produce results and to produce, hopefully, value for shareholders, for customers, for all stakeholders. That process is sort of more, it's not akin to like running a 100-meter dash. It's like a marathon, right? Like, you're running over a long period of time. And I feel like the whirlwind, the tornado that we've had from a regulatory perspective, again, it kind of goes back to what you were saying before about like bank M&A and stuff. It's like, is this what you wanted? Is the thing you thought you wanted what you wanted? Because I actually wrote a piece about this early on this year when this was starting to happen. And I think the title of it was something around like regulatory deregulation uncertainty was what it was.
Yeah.
Because people talk about like wanting regulatory certainty. I think they just as much want deregulatory certainty, right? And, you want deregulation, but if you get deregulation in an uncertain fashion, it just makes it really, really hard to plan. I mean, I think other examples you didn't bring up are things like, broker deposits. Remember when we were talking about broker deposits? Like, I have no sense of like, is the FDIC going to do something new on broker deposits? Would they just not?
They're not going to do. They got rid of the actual RFI on brokered, the like full change that we were talking about, but the ledgering.
Ledgering is another great example.
ILC,
another good example.
Checks, like those are all RFIs that have been put out that nothing has happened on.
Third-party risk management. There's just a bunch. Yeah. So I think that like all of those are areas where you just have no idea where they're going to come down. So that's part one of the uncertainty. And then part two is, as you and I have talked about many times on this show, we live in a wonderful dual banking system, which is just awesome. And the problem with the dual banking system is, I think, fundamentally, the challenge of it, I should say, is when one side becomes more volatile, the other side becomes more volatile to compensate. So like they don't balance each other out by like one becoming more stable while the other one becomes more volatile. They both become more volatile, right? And so friend of the industry Rohit Chopra has taken a new role, helping to coordinate state attorney generals' responses and research into different things that are happening that might harm consumers.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we know something about how he does that job because we got 4 years of it before. And like, that's probably going to be leading a much more aggressive charge on the part of a lot of states in terms of aggressive consumer protection enforcement,
sure.
right? And, not to say that that's not needed or not a logical response to what's happening at a federal level. It probably is, but it just makes it that much more uncertain for banks and fintech companies, right? Like now, not only do you not know how deregulated consumer protection is at a federal level, you don't know how regulated or how harsh consumer protection regulation is going to be at a state level and which states it's going to come from. And so it again, one of the things I talk about a lot with uncertainty, which seems like kind of a watchword for 2025, is that uncertainty benefits lawyers and very few others, right? And I feel like Corner Post and Loper Bright were sort of like early indicators of a golden era for lawyers working in financial services and not so much for anyone else.
Yeah. I don't like the 10th Circuit decision. What are the state chartered BAS banks supposed to do? Also, Loper Bright means that, not Loper Bright, sorry, Corner Post means like we might get Durbin revisited, and then there was Durbin 2, and it's just like, I mean,
the merchants and the banks are like in these settlements forever. Yeah,
this is like not needed. Like this helps. Who is helped by this?
It doesn't help anyone.
We went from settled to unsettled for no good reason, right?
Totally. Well, and the reality, and open banking is a good example of this too. Like, we should all just live with a set of rules. And within those set of rules, the companies that are good at what they do and good at serving customers will win. And the companies that are bad at serving customers will lose. And that's what should happen in a free market. And instead of just living with some set of rules and letting the good ones win and the bad ones lose, we are in this constant state of flux where who wins and who loses has a lot more to do with whoever's benefiting from the regulatory arbitrage at the moment. And so I just think that like regulatory certainty allows the free market to work over a long period of time. Uncertainty prevents the free market from doing what it's supposed to be doing. And to me, that's kind of one of the things I worry about coming out of 2025.
All right. So those are really good, kind of bleak recaps of 2025.
They were.
So because we talked about gifts for too long, I guess we have to kind of also go fast on this one, relatively. What 2 things do you think you'll see in 2026?
All right. I'm going to start. We'll go one to one again here. Okay. So I'm going to start because you just said how depressing that was. I'm going to start with a positive prediction. Are you ready?
Oh, wow. You think good things are going to happen in 2026?
I've got, well, so wait for my second one because it gets a little dark. But my first one is very optimistic. Okay. I'll start on an optimism, which is I think, and I know you're writing about this right now as we record, but I think the consumer credit market will not blow up or have any significant real problems or cracks in 2026. And this is despite the fact that generally speaking, when you talk to chief credit risk officers at banks and fintech companies, they all have kind of a pessimistic vibe. It's not necessarily based on the numbers, which are all holding up reasonably well. It's more based just on like sentiment, the sort of vibe session, shout out Kyla Scanlon. Like it's a little bit more just like a feeling. And yet, when you look at the numbers, they don't really suggest that consumer credit is going to crack in some really major way. There's going to be a significant downturn. Obviously, like a macroeconomic thing could happen at a very bad level that could drive the credit markets down. But absent something like that, which is always possible, especially these days, I don't see any like ticking time bombs really in the consumer credit market. You're not worried about student loans? Not really. Okay. I mean, student loans are not ideal. And obviously, there's been a lot of sort of back and forth with that. But, student loans they restarted repayments of it. We did see some increased delinquencies, but not anything that like wasn't something you could project.
Yeah.
I think the only thing in student loans that makes consumer credit people that I talk to nervous is how aggressive the federal government will be, the Department of Education will be in trying to collect on delinquent student loans, because they have many more collection tools in their toolbox, so to speak, than other lenders do. So that's a potential unknown. But broadly speaking, student lending is probably one of the scarier ones, and it's not that scary.
Yeah.
Subprime auto is scary, but again, like auto is one of those things where you might see better credit quality customers do worse in their performance, and subprime actually maybe hang on a bit, because subprime consumers also tend to need their vehicles for work, more so than kind of wealthier or more prime segments of the market. You know, credit cards, I mean, you know the credit card market very well since you have every single credit card. Like, it's a concentrated market. There's not that many issuers. The issuers that are there are all very like steady hands who know what they're doing. And then, you know, you look at some of the fintech lending categories like earned wage access or buy now, pay later or whatever. And those, you know, you could argue like maybe those folks don't know what they're doing. Maybe there's a lot of credit risk hiding there. That's possible. But the nice thing is, all of those products are all short-term, low dollar.
Right.
And so there's not some outstanding amount of credit that's going to blow up there. And so I do not speak for the commercial side, because I don't know the commercial credit space as well. I know that's where you're looking into. But on the consumer side, I feel reasonably confident in being reasonably optimistic for 2026.
I spoke with someone at the Consumer Bankers Association for my credit cracking series that I'm writing right now, and he was also not worried about consumer credit. But I think consumer credit has like kind of a predictability that commercial sometimes lacks.
Well, and a lot of it's like product structure too, I think, right? Like commercial is just so big and bespoke and weird and like governed by loan covenants that are all different from each other. I wish I
could double pledge some of my collateral out here.
Right.
How do I get in on some of these weird frauds that we were seeing?
Yeah.
In
like
the commercial
if consumer lending worked like commercial lending, we'd all be like tricking lenders into doing things or finding another lender to like, you know, backstop the problems we have paying this. Like it'd be a totally different market. But yeah, consumer feels safe-ish to me right now.
All right. One of the things that I think we're going to see in 2026, and I will say that I think when I predicted something that we saw last year, which was that the Capital One Discover deal would close.
Good call.
Thank you. That was not hard, and I don't think this one's that hard either, is that we will see National Crypto Trust Bank charters be awarded. And my question is, do we also see a lawsuit, and who sues? Based on what we saw with the 2021 charters, or the kind of the OCC's special purpose fintech charter. Right. And so I do think we'll see. I mean, I think it's just hard to sue for the second crypto trust bank, right? Like, there's already one. It's not even a de novo anymore.
Anchorage kind of blows a hole in that argument, doesn't it?
What I did learn is that when the OCC originally was chartering trust banks, there were 5 that were chartered before a lawsuit got filed. The OCC loses that lawsuit. Mm-hmm. But you're like, Kiah, we have a lot of trust banks now. What happens? Congress passes a law. So that law makes the 5 that existed retroactively approved, and then also gives clear authority. And that's where the authority of the OCC to charter trust banks comes from, is this like lawsuit then law. But so I think I know that the bank trade groups probably don't like the national crypto trust banks, but I just feel like they don't have a big leg to stand on with the 6 or 7 charters that are pending.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point. I mean, it's funny. I always find myself like on two sides of these arguments, right? So like on the one hand and on the other, I mean, on the one hand, I agree with you that like between the fact that Anchorage is a thing that exists and hasn't really like created an obvious reason why it shouldn't exist, I think that blows a big hole in that argument. And I also think the fact that like like whenever there's a law passed that sort of more clearly gives the regulator the authority to do something, like even in a post Loper Bright world, like assuming the law is reasonably well written and specific, like you should be on fairly safe ground. However, the flip side is I think it's complete bullshit that crypto companies are using national trust banks as a way to sort of shoehorn narrow banking into the market, even though that was never really the intent. And so I'm very sympathetic to sort of the sort of substantive argument that the banks make about national trust banks. Like, just get a full banking license, you cowards. You know what I mean? Like, just do the actual
But they don't need it for their business plan, Alex.
Right. Well, and like, I think more importantly, Kiah, their business plan includes not being a bank holding company and having all of the requirements of that being placed on them and their investors. So like, I get why they want national trust bank charters. And it's funny, you and I both talked to folks who've been at the OCC over the years. Like, they sort of described the push for national trust bank charters as just a hedge. Like, hey, it's available. You might as well apply for it. You've got plenty of money to pay lawyers. Like, you might still also get one of these other charters, or the OCC might create a whole new category of charters that's a better fit or whatever. So I don't know that we've seen the end of that evolution process on the chartering side for these. But I agree with you. And I think that if they sort of get operationalized to this national trust bank model, I actually think banks have a legitimate gripe, even though they probably don't stand a good legal chance of winning.
Also, do you think any of them get a master account?
bonus prediction.
I don't feel comfortable saying whether or not they get a master account.
So the thing about that is, when we were talking about this on our group chat earlier, I don't have any sense of who makes that decision. So I have a really hard time.
It's really hard to figure out.
Who's in charge of that? Like, who's in charge of that? Is it like if it was Mickey Bowman just signing off on everyone personally?
It feels like it's a committee or something.
It has to be some group or some committee. And it seems, and I might be, I mean, the Fed's independence is another thing we could kind of wager on in 2026. But like,
oh my God, get Kalshi in here.
Right. I'm sure there's a bet on that on Kalshi. I think that like there is some isolated, insulated, independent group that seems to still have the ability to kind of drag their feet or say no, despite how much political pressure has been brought to that question. So I would say the odds are not super great. We saw another kind of crypto neobank form that was kind of formed out of like the husk of Signature Bank that failed or was failed, depending on your interpretation, in a couple of years ago. But I think that like even that one is like a Wyoming chartered special depository financial institution. And it's like, those haven't had a great track record of getting access to master accounts, despite making lots of noise about that. So I would not want to hazard a prediction one way or the other on that one.
The who gets master accounts is going to be a really, really interesting. What tea leaves you can figure out from who gets a master account also is going to be really interesting.
Right.
How long the applications hang out, that'll be good.
Do you have anyone on your board who used to work at the Fed? Like these are all questions that I think observers will have. Can I give you my depressing prediction related to this one?
Yeah, let's get sad.
Let's get dark. Yeah. This very simple premise for this prediction, but sometimes simple is best. If 2025 was 2021 just revisited, so like if we're just playing out these like super cycles and very fast things, so 2025 is just 2021 brought back to life, then, Kiah, 2026 will be 2022. And why is that important? Because crypto in 2021 was booming. It was the time of the NFTs. It was glorious for everyone. And at the end of 2022, FTX blew up and started the whole sort of like bear market that sort of dragged crypto down temporarily. I think it is very likely that some big thing in crypto that has not broken will break in 2026.
You think
I
there's
don't know
an
what that
FTX
is.
hanging out somewhere?
I think there's someone out there hanging out. I have some initial kind of guesses as to maybe where to look. Could potentially be stablecoins. Like we could find out something interesting about Tether in 2026. Or it could be something that's more like stablecoin adjacent in kind of the DeFi ecosystem that sort of gets big enough that it kind of blows up. It could be prediction markets kind of blending together with crypto, the way that like Godzilla and Mothra sometimes team up to destroy Tokyo. So it could be any one of those things. But I think that in general, if these sort of historical parallels hold, something meaningful in crypto will break in 2026, and that will probably only for a very short period of time cause people to get sort of bearish and concerned about this ecosystem. That's my other prediction.
Okay. My final one is we've had, I think, 2 bank failures in 2025, and I think we might see more bank failures.
Kiah, be honest with this prediction. Is this something you think will happen or something that you want to happen because you're fascinated by bank failures?
I think bank failures are really interesting. So one is that I recently wrote about how, there's about in 37% of bank failures, there's signs of either direct or significant contributions of insider abuse and fraud to the failure. Right. And that this takes about 1 to 4 years. It's legible if once you know the bank's going to fail, you can actually go back into, and it's hindsight's 2020, but you can go back into the call report and find signs of that 1 to 4 years. A very common reason why banks, one of the types of common frauds, I guess, I don't want to say why banks fail, but this is a contributor to a lot of failures, is the failure they don't record they don't impair asset valuations when they should. And that because you don't impair the asset or you don't take the write down or reevaluate, you end up having like a string of things happens in your call report, which includes you under reserve for the asset. So this like fraud, the thing you're hiding will show up in a bunch of places. Yeah. And if it can't cure, then you'll then down the line, you'll just have kind of like a slow degradation of asset quality, potentially capital, and then maybe a regulator looks, and by that point, it's too late. And I am wondering if 4 years ago, maybe there were some loans made that they won't be repaid. There might be also I think there's a lot of I don't know if it's like pride or what that like prevents a bank from acting on this information, or optimism that they shouldn't impair.
I wanted to ask you about that because I mean, were there bad decisions made 4 years ago? Yeah, there were. So that was kind of the theme of my prediction. If you think that's possible,
if you think it happened 4 years ago, I'm not saying it happened, but if it did happen.
I think there's maybe some of that lurking. But my question is, what's the difference between like fraud versus not taking your medicine? And what I mean by that is like, I think of fraud, and I loved your article that you wrote, the call is coming from inside the house, right? And like, I think of fraud as like a very explicit, like someone like lied or did something wrong that they knew was wrong and then they hid, and it kind of becomes like a time bomb that blows up eventually. Pig butchering being maybe one example that's relevant to this discussion. By contrast, like not taking your medicine seems like a much more sort of human thing to do. It's like a thing I could imagine myself doing, right? Which is something to the point of like, hey, look, these loans are not great. We probably should impair them. We should probably like kind of like update our accounting for these.
How aggressive should you be at a weakening credit? Yes.
Right.
That's
like
really where there's some ambiguity.
When it's like almost like how honest and self-reflective should we be with ourselves and with our investors about like this thing happening? And to me, I call that taking your medicine because to a degree it's like kind of necessary, kind of unpleasant. But if you do it, you can probably forestall or potentially avoid worse things happening later. And I would imagine that for all of the instances of like fraud, there's probably way more of like just kind of made a bad decision. We don't want to take our medicine. Yeah.
If I had to, and this is not a legal answer or anything, but if I had to guess, I think taking your medicine is when you lie to yourself, and fraud is when you lie to someone else about it.
Oh, I love that definition.
And that one reason why I think why I'm so interested in insider fraud and abuse is in some of these small community banks that at some point people at the bank would become involved in hiding the fraud and covering up. And one of them was like this bank in Oklahoma that failed, and it turned out the CEO was like covering his friend's overdrafts, but these overdrafts were like thousands of dollars, and he was just moving money around and depositing, and so he was faking all these statements, and so he showed a faked statement to the OCC examiner, who didn't realize it was fake, but thought that there were too many transactions on it, so he asked to see like one of the days, like, it would have been, let's say a month or 90 days or whatever. Yeah. And he asked to see, like, show me June 7th. Show me what June 7th looked like. Yeah. And when they pulled the real one, it would have shown all the fraud. And so that's like how kind of close they were to not getting caught, or that
if
weird
not
bank
for that
failed.
OCC examiner,
But like they didn't even realize it was fake. They just thought there were too many things. And then we talked about a little bit about the bank in like I think Illinois that failed because like deposits were left off of their ledger, and the subcontractor realized it and reported it. And so you're just like, I don't know if that was deliberate or if it was, a pure accident, but it was enough that like the bank became undercapitalized once you added these deposits back in. And so it's just one of those things where like, I think enough time has passed that if a bad decision was made in 2024 and we choose not to be aggressive about it this year, then next year there might be another lie that has to be told to someone else, because you're really hoping it can kind of fix itself, or you're hoping you can grow out of it and like kind of fill the hole. And that tends to not work either.
Yeah, that's in my world we call that gambling addiction. So it's that I think you're right, and I think not to get way dark, but like gambling addiction thematically probably will make some appearances in our content in 2026.
Everything's getting so much dumber, Alex.
On a macro scale and on a micro scale, yeah. It is dumb. Like we were joking via our group chat about someone dumb on Twitter talking about the interest you can get on bonds on a prediction market, and how much like better the risk-free yield is on prediction markets rather than in a bank savings account. And like that's not apples to oranges, that's like apples to like sticks of dynamite. Like those are just so radically different things, you can't even compare them. And yet we are in a dumb world where all distinctions have been flattened out. Not exactly ending on a high note. Kiah, can we talk about like resolutions for a second? Things we want to do, just to like,
do you do resolutions? Do we do resolutions?
So I try not to give myself like grades that I'm going to fail next year, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But I do try to like think about what are things I want to do more of.
Okay.
As well as maybe a couple like specific things. Can I just run through my list with you? All right. So my resolutions, for 2026. All right, I'm just going to read my list. That's funny given what we were just talking about. Number 1, place a bet on a prediction market.
Okay.
I've never used a prediction market. Are you going to do a sports bet? Yeah, I think I might. Or maybe like, I wonder if I can still bet on Mark Zuckerberg getting divorced. I don't know if that one is getting carried over to 2026. That was my favorite 2025 bet that you could make. But I just feel like I criticize prediction markets, but I've never actually used them. I criticize sports betting too, but like I have used DraftKings, so I at least feel like somewhat qualified to say that. So I want to use a prediction market so that I better understand it. So that's one. Read more nonfiction books instead of social media during the day, and read more fiction books instead of streaming movies and television at night.
Nice.
So kind of a two-part.
I like that. How many books have you read for 2025?
Oh gosh, it's maybe somewhere between 10 and 20, I would say.
Really? You've only read 10 or 20 books?
Yeah, I'm tragically behind you and my wife and many other people. Many other people in my life who are way better and more diligent readers than I am. I mean,
that's like a tenth of what I thought you were going to say.
Oh, no. I don't. I collect books, and I have a ton on my shelf, and I love books. And if you're counting how many kids' books have I read to my kids, probably 10,000 maybe.
Yeah, okay.
But my books myself, maybe 20.
That's crazy.
So I need to do better. So I just find myself, I read a lot, right?
Yeah, we read a lot for our jobs, which means that probably,
and
it can be a chore sometimes to read. It kind
of hurts my brain. So I think one of the things I might do, I have a ton of nonfiction books I want to read.
But they're boring.
But that's the thing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to build it into my daytime routine.
Okay.
which is supposed to be taken up by work. But instead, I'm going to read nonfiction books instead of working.
This is good.
During
this is
the
good
day.
that you're talking about this in a work podcast too.
I know. Yeah, I hope our bosses don't listen. All right, so that's one. Another one is get very good at an old video game.
Nice.
Because like I used to be good at video games, and then I had kids, and then my skills atrophied, and now my kids and others in my life are mocking my lack of video game skills.
Got it.
And so I don't know if you've ever seen that Friends episode where they get the Miss Pac-Man machine and Chandler stays home from work all day to get good at it. That's going to be me in 2026. I'm going to get good at an old video game. Fix up my bike, which is sitting in my garage and is tragically like not working, and then ride my bike more. 2026. Nice. Finish remodeling my cabin in the woods so that when society does completely collapse, as we've been talking about, I'll have some place to go. Feel good about that. Cook a lot more Sunday dinners for me and my family. Because we sometimes do like extended family Sunday dinners, and I love to cook on the weekends. So ramp that up even more. And then finally, take my eldest son and the rest of my family to Legoland.
Which one? Where are they?
The Legoland is in San Diego, California, which is actually, I think, one of the most kid-friendly places on Earth. They have the zoo, they have Balboa Park, they have the beach, they have Legoland. So it's kid paradise, basically. And my eldest son is obsessed with Legos and wants to go to Legoland. So.
Okay. I'm from Omaha, so I will have to I'm obligated to say that I think Omaha Zoo is on par, if not better, than the San Diego Zoo. So
I'm happy to test that.
I don't think we have a Legoland though, so we will probably lose out on that one.
Yeah, that makes it hard to compete in the aggregate.
Yeah. Okay, so mine are that I want to get rid of one physical book that's in my house every month by reading it and giving it away to someone else. Because
that's a nice way to do that, but I still am against this resolution.
This resolution is derived from my belief that everything that is in my house should pay rent to me, and books that are not being actively read or reread are not paying rent. And
you are so transactional, Kiah. You're such a capitalist.
I don't like owning books. They just take up space and they're very heavy. So, and I have read. Also, I've read.
That makes sense.
I've read.
I wanted to ask you about this.
Almost 60. I've read 60 books this year, so I feel like one of us here is a book reader, and one of us here is a hoarder, and they're not the same person.
They're not. I will admit to that. I will cop to that. I'm a book collector. I'm a hoarder. I hoard books.
Okay. I want to
read them and then dispose of them like you don't care about them anymore, which fair enough.
Or you borrow them from the library so you don't have to accumulate them in the first place.
Look, I love the library. As much as we buy books, I use the library just as much or more. We are pro-library on Bankroad Corner, 100%.
Okay, so I want to finish one pen because I use it up all of the way, not because I lost it. And
you lose pens.
I lose pens way more frequently. I got really into pens about 2 years ago, which I went from like a normal amount of pens to probably 60 in 2 years. I went to Japan. That's a big place for pens. And I really don't write as much with pen and paper as you do. Apparently. So I could stand to finish one pen.
Wow, that's a good one.
Thank you.
That's a good one.
We should. We'll go offline and we'll compare pens. I've got some
I also have questions for you about your handwriting, but we'll get to that later.
I've got good handwriting. And I figured you did. Clearly.
Well, of course, obviously. That's something I'm going to teach my kids too, honestly.
Good. Yeah. Okay, so 2 more. I want to eat more soup. It's soup season.
Say more words. Okay, you just love soup.
I get most of my food from Blue Apron, which means that I don't cook a lot, but soup is cheap.
They do,
and it's really healthy. It's a way to get a lot more vegetables. It's cold outside. Soup makes me feel good. I always get excited about eating soups. I think soups are one of the foods that get better over time. They increase in flavor over time.
Because the ingredients meld together more. I get that. I like the soup one. That is, it sounds weird on the surface, but the more you explained it, the more it made sense.
Also, I just feel like I'm not eating enough soup, so I could increase my soup consumption by 10, 15%. And
you don't cook soups though? You would buy these soups?
No, I just get most of my food from Blue Apron, so there's not a lot of soup making opportunities. So I have to build in the soup making times.
I got you. Because I will say the thing about soup is I don't like to make it because it's messy. Like,
What?
you have to get the blender out and like do the immersion.
Alex,
and
that's
like,
that's the craziest thing I've ever heard. That soup is
no,
messy.
man, soups are like kind of annoying to make. I love soup, but like they're kind of annoying to make.
Oh my God. Okay.
You have to take like different things, and
wrong?
like there's lots of pots and pans, and
oh my God.
I'm not a big. I love soup, but making soup is not my favorite.
I also
won
a soup making competition in 2024, and my friend had a trophy, and I'm looking at that trophy. It's above my bacon plate. So I think you're wrong, and also I'm an award-winning soup maker. So
well, now we have to find an opportunity for all of us to get together in person and have like a soup cook-off. I'm obsessed with this idea. All right,
okay.
give me your last
final one. Are you ready for this?
Yeah.
I'm going to sign up for up to 3 new credit cards, and I'm extremely excited. Bilt's going to come out with a new credit card, and they're getting rid of the Wells Fargo. So I have to have a new one there. Okay. They're going to come out with 3 cards. So, there's like the free one, and then the medium one, and then the expensive one. But they haven't said what the
you have to have the Bilt card already, right?
I have the Bilt card already, yes.
Okay, that's what I thought. Okay.
Yes.
But
and then Hyatt's coming out with a new card.
Okay.
So I already have one Hyatt card. The question is do I get the second? Do I upgrade? Whatever. I did actually sign up for the IHG card because they've got a big sign-up bonus. And then the question is always, should I sign up for the City Strata or the Capital One card? So I only signed up for 2 cards this year, and really that's
disappointing.
I felt like for a while I was trying to sign up for no cards, and then I just kind of gave into it. But the Bilt card doesn't have an annual fee, so it felt like net neutral.
You just described that in the language that gambling addicts do, and so I can appreciate your obsession with this. I will tell you, and I have almost nothing to contribute to this conversation because I don't optimize points.
How are you taking your family to San Diego? We got to talk.
Just with money, but it's okay. Yeah, just with money. But anyway, setting that aside, I will say that I did use a Capital One lounge in DC, and it slapped. It was pretty awesome.
It's a good lounge.
If you're trying to make the case for yourself, Capital One lounge, pretty good.
Yeah. Well, they're changing their lounge access next year too, so there's some considerations there.
It's a whole thing.
Lots of changes in credit cards in this year. Thinking about it for next year. So
well, I mean, wouldn't be the beginning, end of one year and beginning of a new year if you weren't planning out your credit card strategy for the year. So that is a good place to end.
Well, Alex, thank you so much for hanging out with me today and shooting the breeze with presents and predictions and stuff that sucked in 2025. I hope our paths cross soon in 2026.
I'm sure they will. Yes. Lots more travel and fun fintech takes events coming up and stuff. So Kiah and I will keep everybody in the loop, but delightful as always. And I'll talk to you a million times between now and then. But for listeners, have a happy holidays. And be on the lookout for a very fun episode in Alex's feed about Christmas movies. So that's true. All right. Good tease. All right. Bye, Alex. Bye-bye. Thank you for listening to this episode of Bank Nerd Corner. Stay up to date with news and trends in the bank space by subscribing wherever you get your podcasts. Also, if you love FinTech Takes Banking, please tell a friend. Talk to you next time.